Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today, I'd like you to meet Dani Dufresne, the badass secret agent behind some of the most jaw-dropping campaigns you've ever seen. As the brains and brawn behind Aux Co, Dani is the go-to creative force when brands need to execute high-stake ideas fast, flawlessly, and without the bloated budgets or red tapes of traditional agencies. Dani shows up and delivers unapologetically every time. If you haven't heard her name yet, it's because she's been busy making everyone else look legendary. Dani, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be talking with you.
That's awesome. So a little bit, all right, I do the fast flyover and that quick overview, but would you tell the audience what it is that you're doing today and why it's important?
So I have a company called the Aux Co. We act as a fractional production operations unit for agencies and brands. Really, this all came from my 20 plus years in-house at production companies, post houses, and then the better half of that in-house at agencies. And really just, among other things, seeing the way that there's such a disconnect between an agency approach to production, a production company's approach to production, and then what the brand actually is needing. And they all communicate completely different. So now that we've been having so many agencies either merge to become one collective giant monster and where creative isn't worth as much to them, and then new smaller agencies popping up that are all about creative, and they can actually pitch to clients much more innovative, disruptive ideas, but they can't really have the overhead of a full-time production staff, or they sometimes just need consulting in, they really know this one field, but they want to be able to have bigger offerings for their clients, because instead, it's, gone are the days of this agency is, they do their social, they do that. Like every agency really can do anything, everything 360 now. We've been around since, 2017. So almost we're getting close to our 10-year mark. Pretty excited. And it's really amazing because we're able to provide consulting much earlier in the process, because I think too often creatives and agencies are fearful of the cost to bring in production experts earlier on. So then they prepackage what they feel like is the idea, what they've planned that they should do. And then they either call up production companies or call me, and it's not the best version of the concept, or they don't really know how much it costs, or biggest thing that I strive for is getting media and PR involved from day one. Because if we can ideate the creative alongside with how people are going to be interacting with it, it has so much more value for their money. It was really because I was seeing these issues within the old model of agency. It was that typical story where I would constantly be hired by, a big agency shop because they wanted to make changes. And then very quickly I would realize they want that, but they won't let me do it. They actually don't want that. That's like that they were selling me on the job versus like actually making the changes. And a lot of that is just, as they all become the big one monster now, they're all kind of, having to merge to make any money. Everything's just taking longer to make any change. So I really started as just being a producer, a fixer, and people calling me for help can you do a shoot in 2 days in LA? Yes, of course, whatever it was. And just being known as that through so many people. So I started that in 2017, but it really was interesting because the term fractional didn't exist. So now that is more of a term that they would say, are you a freelancer? No, it's completely different. The concept is that someone in-house full-time on your staff is not going to give you the best work all the time. They're not going to raise their hand and say, that's actually not, maybe we should do this instead. They have no incentive to find you the best people, or they have no time. They're going to just do whoever they have, whether they're good for the project or not. They're going to push it along to make more money. It's just not cohesive to actually like holding the creative bar high. And I think that's why most of my clients are, either creative duo that left an agency, or really high-end creatives that they have the ability to pitch big ideas and work, but they don't know how to actually execute anything. They don't need to.
Well, and
But
that's
those
awesome.
clients that I have, like, really love, that what I care about most is the creative.
And that you're concerned about your clients, the brand that's going out.
Exactly. Whether they're in-house agencies and creatives at a brand, or it's a smaller agency, vendors and partners, like, typically they don't care about your why. They don't care about why that is the reason that the creative is what it is. They care about how much it costs, all the logistics, all of that stuff. And they are the first to, like, cut and trim things back when they, when they need to, because they don't get the why. Whereas I normally come in and I ask so many questions, because it's not because I'm dismantling or don't agree with what the concept is. It's because I want to know, what more can we do with it, right? Like, digital media is great, but out of home media nowadays there's so many options, and there's so much you can do to create custom out of home media that, is much more engaging than all the other noise out there. And too often, none of that is thought about. So that's why the brands really like working with me too.
And it's fantastic because what you're doing is being disruptive inside of it, inside of a market, inside of the agency model you've already just talked about, right, has become one big kludge at the top, and everybody's, they've consolidated. But being able to be nimble and respond to very specific needs with each of your clients, and in many cases for the clients that they serve, you can turn everything upside down and backwards. Will you tell us a story about something that a project that you took on? I usually like the ones that didn't go the way that you expected, but then finally you got to the cool outcome. Will you take us on a journey?
Nothing ever goes the way that we expect it to, right? Yeah, there's a few. Recently, a few years ago, this project actually started, like, during COVID, but it took a long time. With one of my clients, we did a project for Monogram Appliances with Marcus Samuelson. We had just done a series with him for Uber Eats during COVID, but this was one where Monogram Appliances really wanted to show off their high-end appliances and how customized it could be, but they wanted to do it in what I find is the best version of the argument for brands these days, and a branded series, but it's not logo, line, like talking point. It's real storytelling. So we presented them with this amazing story. Our good friend Marcus Samuelson happened to be renovating his home in Sag Harbor, in the very first Black community that was started in the US, and especially on the East Coast. And that was really important because Monogram specifically, those appliances have to be built custom into Europe. None of them are standard size, at least for the line that we were promoting. Most of them are not. So the biggest thing with that is we all ended up becoming contractors, doing a full kitchen renovation on a tiny island, off the very remote, in the middle of nowhere. There are lots of problems came up. So there were lots of pushes, lots of things that constantly changed, with the timeline constantly pushing. We were very lucky to bring on an amazing director within the food space, but also within just, like, documentary filmmaking and storytelling. And so One Wrench was supposed to be a 8-month project. It became a year project, and then a year and a half. And then it was kind of approaching 2 years by the time we delivered it. But I've never seen more things go wrong than when we had to factor in home renovation into it. I don't know how the home renovation shows do it, but we weren't expecting that. Then I would say what was interesting is it ended up being, because of when we needed to release it, it ended up being so last minute that he wasn't even moved into the home yet. He had bought there was no furniture, there was no nothing. So then the week of the shoot, I become an interior designer. And my team and I are at the only Home Goods on the island. We are, like, we're up till 2 a.m., like, decorating the entire house because we had to shoot there. And, they ended up loving everything we did, and they kept it all there. But it was just a very, and I think it was like 20 degrees outside because we ended up shooting it in February. It was a crazy shoot, but it all came together really well. And we actually won an Emmy for it, which was amazing. So I think a lot of brands also don't know that if you have content on those lower channels at the bottom of your guide, right? Like Bon Appetit and Condé Nast, not only will they pay for some of your production and pay that cost as their media investment, but you are also can be nominated and win an Emmy if you want.
That is a fabulous story, and I love renovation stories are always horrific. My background, I come from an IT sort of project management mindset initially. And early on, I said, I'm a project manager. I can manage a renovation at my home while I'm recovering from surgery. Yeah. Home renovation is not for the faint of heart. And to actually try and do that while you're monetizing it for a client to actually like
Yeah.
sell a series of advertisements. Oh my gosh. That is a
It was
disruptive
it
moment.
was it was a bit crazy, but again, it ended up working out. Every time my team, starts to get really stressed about something or is, I just don't know how we're going to do this or, someone's really worried, I often will say, doesn't it? I use this to calm myself down. Also, we always figure it out. It always gets done. We don't miss the deadline. We always get it done. It may not be a fun, comfortable process at the end, but we always deliver.
You are also a business owner, right? So
Mhm.
your business serves and you have clients, but you are a business owner. As you made the choice to go down that path, what are some of the bold decisions that you've made that have changed the trajectory for Oxco?
Very early on, I mean, I think I had only had the company a couple years before I started bringing on people to work for me, and I even should have done it sooner. You really, at that point, you don't have a business until you start hiring people to do the work for you because you're not making any money if you're doing the work. You're just getting paid. And there's a huge difference. And it allows you, I think most of us that have started our own company have CEO brain. We have bold ideas and we're juggling tons of things. And it isn't so important that we have tools, whether they're, software or staff, assistants, whatever it is. We need those things in place to help us do less. We cannot have a clear head, and there will not be room in your brain for that 10,000-foot view of the future because you also can't manifest the next 10 years if you can't see it. And that all needs a quieter brain. And I think that once I started realizing that and how to train a team and bringing people on and the importance of it's worth the money to take that stuff off of your plate. And investing in that and investing in myself in that, my company has just grown immensely because I actually have time to not only get more clients and do more work, right? Which is great, but also really focus on not just saying yes to everything, but finding and digging into those perfect clients. I think that's like I very often when I chat with people that are just now starting their company, I make sure that they know, like, don't be afraid because once you start paying someone else, you're very quickly going to start making more money.
Absolutely. And I really thank you for sharing those points because they are key for every business owner. And it doesn't matter what industry that they're in. As soon as you start hiring people to do the work and you stop doing the work, you're truly stepping into the role of CEO and you're building a business and not just trading your time for money, which is the same thing as working for a company and getting a paycheck at the end of every 2 weeks.
Exactly. And it's very hard to build your business for 5 years, have those clients that are used to having you, and then being like, here's who you like, and then not they don't get you. So and it's easier to do that with new clients. So the sooner the better, because you could still get stuck with old client work if you're not making sure that this is no, this is the model we're working. This is how it goes. I'm at the beginning, and then I don't even need to be involved. When you have my team, you basically have me, and it just transfers out.
And you get to pop in at moments of celebration and be seen for short bursts when you want to on your terms.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing worse than like when I Slack someone like a random thought that I've had about a project and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're doing that right now." I'm like, "Of course you are." Like I shouldn't even be bothering you because you're always doing it. And if you don't know what to do, you always call me, which is not very often. So yeah, it's my number one thing.
That's fantastic. As you've grown your business, what are some of the roadblocks or setbacks that you experienced and how did you navigate through that?
As I mentioned earlier on, fractional wasn't a term when we started. So a lot of that was like I didn't have an elevator pitch. I didn't even really I knew didn't want to be a production company and we weren't a production company because we didn't do just one thing. We didn't just do commercials or just photo shoots or just events. We do whatever the creative project is. We go and find those production companies and find those partners that are right for it. And explaining that, especially to the older sort of ingrained in the old model agency people was completely crazy. And then I think with that, as we started white labeling for our agency clients, I felt really hesitant to market, felt really hesitant to talk about the auxiliary or to put out, you know, myself and the auxiliary, because to the end clients, we don't exist. We're at that agency. So when you do that, it's a little bit tough, but at the same time, now I've had to get over it. So, we've now, if you go to our website, you'll see the very beginning of our, it's not even a reel, because at the very beginning of the video says, this is not our work. Because it's not. It's our clients' work. It's our brand's work. And we want them to know that we respect that and that we love that they allow us to partner with them on stuff and to help make things better. But we have no ego about that.
That's a beautiful part of the story, because you are helping them elevate so that they are serving the needs of their customers. And it's a consulting mindset that's been lost in so many industries, that the consultant's role is not about taking credit for anything. It's about shining a spotlight on their client and the outcomes for their then customers. And I want to go and check out that this is not a reel, because that is a beautiful way of highlighting the beautiful things that your clients do. You are enabling them to do it. You're supporting them to do it, but it is them. And that is
I
something that
think it's
leaders need
important
to.
as a consultant, like the term consulting, I didn't even know what a consultant was for the longest time. And then, I realized, we all hit that point where the information in our head is worth more than anyone will pay us for it. And that's why we've all started these companies in the first place, because we're like, they're all doing it wrong. I have to do this. And there's not a place for ego in what I do, at least when it comes to creative. But where I do think it's important as a consultant is to not be a yes man in let them run all over you, right? Like if you see something, say something in that sense. So I'm not going to, I don't want to, it's not a good client if they're just like, nope, just do exactly what we've written you. Cause that's not, I can't add anything to that. They think they know what they're doing, but they really don't, which means they're not open to like change. But also like, that's the only place I kind of have my ego. I need to protect my time. And when you're able to stand up for yourself that way with clients, they also start respecting you more. They realize like, oh yeah, I'm paying you for your expertise. They're not paying you to just roll over and do whatever they ask you to. That's why you're paid at a premium versus their in-house people.
Absolutely. And it is a key distinction, right? If they are telling you what to do and how to do it, you are staff
Mhm.
augmentation, regardless of what in the creative role, right? They can get that in a lot of different places for a lot less money. And that's not what you're offering. And that's not the value that you add. As a consultant, being in that space, challenging question, challenging decisions, challenging approach, and trying to continuously elevate the output is part of your role in that space.
But I really think anyone, no matter what their business and industry, can apply that. So if someone comes to you because they want to do an event and they're like, hey, we really want to do these plaques or whatever it is, and you get more information about the company or the idea and you have better ideas, would you give them your better ideas? You're not just taking in an RFP and just doing only what they're asking for. You want to make sure that they're also, they may not, it's not that they don't, it's not their fault. They just don't know because they've not done it. That's what you're there for.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what role you play inside of any company, right? And it doesn't matter the vertical that that business is in. The ability to ask good questions and to challenge the thinking of the norm is something that everybody should be doing everywhere. When you're thinking about if you had a piece of advice to give leaders who are on that path to starting something new and elevating what they're doing, what's a piece of advice that you could give today that you wish you had heard 5 years ago?
The thing that I wish, well, there's kind of two things. One, the thing I always say to people that are in that position that are starting is something I kind of already knew when I started, which was just if there's something that's just like tapping at you, you cannot like get it out of your head. Don't let anything anyone says like stop you. There is a reason that that idea is there and keeps showing itself. There's a reason. And then I would say the second thing that I wish I knew is really no one taught me how to manage people. No one taught me how to manage a staff and hire a staff. No one taught me boundaries. My first job was like right when Blackberries came out. So like although I could leave my computer was still at the office, I've always been an always on person, and that's me. But no employee that you have will ever care about your company as much as you do. And that's okay. If you have the expectation that they should, you have the problem. That's not them. It is a job. Will they be great employees and love you and love what you do? Yes. But you can't put the same pressure and expectations on them that you have on yourself. That's just rude. That's not how any of us would want to be treated. And I think that's all about learning boundaries, and learning how to let people fail while having their backs. No one is learning if you're not letting them do the job. If you're micromanaging them and over their shoulder and having them give you everything to review before they send it out, then they're not learning. And I think it's even harder now that so many of us work remotely with our teams, where they're not just being exposed to it and they learn a little faster. So I think it's really learning that they are not your friends, they are your employees. And that's okay. That's good. You can be friendly with them and love them, but you shouldn't be texting them on a Friday night at 10 p.m. because you have this idea for something, because they're getting like an anxiety attack, that they're getting text, that kind of stuff. And having boundaries and learning how to manage people up instead of manage down. Like, I'm lifting them up, even though I'm not talking down to them and managing down to them to where they feel like they can't do anything. They're paralyzed because they think that they have to wait for me to tell them every single little thing.
Absolutely. Dani, if you have piqued the interest and curiosity from the audience, how do they learn more about Aux Co?
Well, you can check us out at theaux.co. Also, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, Dani Dufresne on LinkedIn, and all of our info is there. And yeah, give us a shout anytime. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn and either chat about your business, or if you need any advice, I'm always here.
Dani, thank you for a fabulous conversation and taking us through your journey in creating Aux Co, but sharing some really fundamental leadership principles that everybody needs to remember, right? If you actually have a business, when you start hiring employees and you step into that CEO role and have other people doing the work. And the sooner you do it, the easier it is for you to remove yourself from client-facing interactions so that your team can grow and scale for you, and that the business actually has traction and the ability to elevate. One of the other fabulous things that you talked about in what you did was you actually sort of created a niche in a market space that already existed and found a way to add value to multiple brands without having to compete directly with the big guys anymore, because you were solving problems that they no longer needed to, or that they weren't, so that you could have the opportunity to do that. And I really do love the story about your not a real, so that and we all should be really celebrating what our clients and our customers do with our products and services. What we do and how we do it is fun and interesting to us, but it's not what our customers and clients really need. And so when you can speak to them and what matters, that's the best thing.
I think that for anyone, that not being afraid of your disruption and embracing it, instead of trying to be everything for everyone, out of just being afraid of not getting enough business, when in reality, if you build something that is niche around what you do and disruptive, you will get business through that. And the more that you're specific and not scared of not having anything, and so and not embracing that disruption, then you end up you could have stayed where you were without starting your own company.
Absolutely true. Dani, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Audience members, you know the rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.